Hey, how's it going? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be doing my August wrap-up. And in the month of August, I read a total of 21 books. I also had so many DNFs that I think I might have had almost as many DNFs as I had books read. I mean, just to take a look at my stack of DNFs that I had this month, this is ridiculous. I did end up DNFing both of these thriller books pretty early on, within like the first 50 pages. Neither of these were gripping me right away. I think one of the biggest bummers of this month was the fact that I DNF'd Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson, because I was 50% of the way through this book when I decided to DNF. I just really couldn't stand this one on audio personally. I thought it was so annoying. I didn't like the protagonist, and I just didn't care to find out where this book was going. I did have a few horror books that I ended up DNFing this month as well, like Myra, and then I also DNF'd Smile for the Cameras. This one is a bummer because I really thought I could be into this one, but I got almost 100 pages in and I just didn't care about anything. Another thriller-ish kind of book that I DNF'd this month is A Lonesome Place for Dying. It actually takes place in the area where I live, but it ended up being a little bit too heavy on like the detective, like police kind of point of view. It just kind of bored me to tears. I also DNF'd Backhanded Compliments for the second time. I've really tried to get into this one and I just can't seem to get into it. I'm also really bummed because I also ended up DNFing All Fours as well as Evenings and Weekends. I feel like for me, Evenings and Weekends was feeling a little bit too like Sally Rooney kind of style to me. I don't know, it's not the kind of literary fiction writing that I'm into. And then All Fours, I listened to 20% of this one on audio and I just couldn't get invested in the story and I didn't care about the characters. And then lastly, my most recent one is the fact that I DNF'd Twisted Love. I got 78 pages into this one today, actually, the day that I'm filming this. I really thought maybe this could be the romance book for me, but like, God, these characters are so annoying. They're driving me nuts already. So I think I've just decided that maybe this author is not the romance author of my dreams, and that's okay. I did also end up working on 5 different reading vlogs in the month of August. The first thing I did in August was the reading horror books recommended by Reddit, which was very fun and probably going to be the first episode in a new series that I hope to work on this channel. I did a few different videos that were like reading new thriller and romance books, or just like reading new thrillers, because I participated in my friend Jan's full moon readathon. And then I also just posted a vlog that was like reading books about dreams, memories, and alternate realities. And this one is like a themed reading vlog that I've been wanting to do for a very long time, so I had so much fun with this. And then lastly, I did make a reading vlog dedicated to reading the trilogy of the books The Summer I Turned Pretty. And then over on Patreon, I made 2 exclusive videos this month. The first one that I made was like a Kiss, Marry, Kill video with my best friend Brittany, and it was kind of like a bookish version of the Kiss, Marry, Kill game, and we had so much fun. And then I also did end up posting a monthly vlog over on my Patreon that was kind of showing more of like what was going on with me in August. I mean, one thing I will say about my reading in August that was an amazing surprise is that I think I'm starting to fall back in love with thrillers, because I'm reading a lot of thrillers that I'm actually really enjoying again, and that has been the loveliest surprise of all. Alright, so jumping into all of the books that I read this month, I think I want to start with like my lowest rated books and then work my way up to my #1 favorites. So starting with the lowest rated books that I had this month, the lowest rated I actually had was The Other Family, and I know that I just said I'm falling back in love with thrillers, and then my lowest rated book of the month is a thriller, but it really is a genre that is so hit or miss for me. And even though I ended up giving this one 2 stars, like I didn't actually hate this book. I thought it was just fine. I actually really liked the beginning of this a lot because it's the kind of thriller where like we're following a family who's moved from LA to New York City, and then they find out that this other family was murdered in their home in the 90s, and like this house has been sitting vacant for like the last 20 years. And it's about the freaky things that start to happen in the neighborhood, like they feel like they're being watched. We get multiple different perspectives in this book. I really liked the first like 100 pages. I thought maybe this one would even be a new favorite, but the second half of this book just really lost my interest. Oh my God, it just got so boring, so repetitive. I didn't care about some of the perspectives that we were getting at all. And then the ending was the biggest joke of all time. And like the ending was why this book went from like being about a 3-star to a 2-star, because the ending was just so abrupt. It didn't give us any closure on anything, and I was just very annoyed, so it got 2 stars. Another book that I gave 2 stars this month is The Stepford Wives by Ear 11. And I feel so bad about this one, you know, because I know that this book is a classic and there's a lot of people that really love this book. And I can understand why. I just don't think this was the book for me and my personal taste. I mean, you know, this book first published in the 1970s, and I feel like you can definitely tell with the writing that it published in the 1970s. Not that that's a bad thing, but you know, when I'm reading other books, like say like Interview with a Vampire, like that one also came out in the 70s, but the writing feels feels so timeless that it doesn't feel like it came out in that time period. I think the concept for this book is really interesting, and I actually really did like the ending, even though I've definitely been spoiled for this plot. Like, I knew what was gonna come, but I still think it was written in a way where it felt very predictable to me what was going on. But I also know that this book was like the first of its time, you know, like this was probably the first book to ever really do a twist like this. So I can appreciate this book, I just didn't really care for it myself, and I gave it 2 stars. And then another one of my lowest rated books this month was actually Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. Oh my god, what a bummer. I have given Ashley Poston 2 5-stars before. Like, I absolutely love The Dead Romantics and The 7-Year Slip. And so I don't know what's been going on with her romance releases lately, but I just have not been loving. You know, I really thought though that this one could work for me because this is a story about a girl who's like a songwriter. I love following people in music and books, especially songwriters, because I've been writing songs since I was in high school, and that's just a particular subject that really does interest me. But the thing about this book that really didn't work for me is the magical element, you know, because Ashley Poston, she always has this like magical element in her romance stories. And in this book, it was that she could hear this guy's voice in her head. And it just really felt so cringy to me. Like, I don't know, I couldn't get on board with it. But this also could be because I'm not a big fantasy reader, and I know that this is probably a more common thing to read about in fantasy. I mean, this book definitely had its like moments where I felt like it could be getting emotional, but I just never really connected with the characters in that way. I hope to find another win from Ashley Poston in the future because these last 2 releases have not been it for me. So those were my only 2-star books of the month. I mean, the great thing about DNFing is that a lot of those books probably would have ended up on that list. But now moving on to my 3-star reads of the month. The first 3-star read that I wanted to talk about is this one called Jawbone. This one is a book that I have such mixed feelings on because there are so many things that I enjoyed about this, and I really have a love-hate relationship with the writing style in this book because I feel like so many of the pages in this book are really bulky, paragraph, like wall-to-wall text. Like, what are we doing? I literally, when I open a page and I see this, it makes me want to scream. I just do not understand why we have to have the wall-to-wall text like this. Like, would it kill you to break it up with some paragraphs? And so the writing in this book is the main reason why I ended up rating this one a little bit lower, but I do love that this book is a horror book that explores so many different things. I mean, I love that at the center of this story, it really is a story about like toxic female friendships, and that's something that I really do enjoy reading about. I also love that this book had really great atmosphere and really great vibes overall. I like that we're following 2 different perspectives in this book, but I also don't think that this one's gonna be super memorable for me. I mean, it's been a few weeks since I've read this one, and even now I'm kind of like, how did it end? Or like, what exactly happened? Like, it's fading from my memory so quickly, and that's how I know I can't give this more than a 3-star. Another 3-star that I had this month is A Language of Limbs, which this is a book that I did talk about during my like dreams and memories vlog that I posted, but I talked about how I wasn't able to finish it yet because this book was like really sad and really depressing. But luckily I was able to finish it after doing that vlog, and I still do stand by what I was saying about how this book is just very bleak and very sad, because in this story we're following this teenage girl who's living in Australia in the 1970s, and this book is really cool because it's one of those like alternate reality books where like in one chapter we get to see how her life would have been different if this one thing happened. And so the one thing that really like changes the course of her life is whether or not her parents catch her making out with this other girl on the couch. And in the universe where they do catch her doing that, they immediately like kick her out of the home. She has to really like make a life for herself, you know, like living on the streets. And she meets some really incredible people along the way, but it's still like very sad and very depressing. And then in the alternate chapters we get to see how her life would have played out if her parents never found out about her sexuality. So in each one of these chapters we go back and forth between her 2 different, you know, lives and see how things would be different. And this book was just very sad and very bleak, but I think the writing in this story was very, very beautiful. It's very like poetic and kind of like flowery writing, but I also don't understand how like this book is only like 280-ish pages, but it took me weeks to finish this book. It took me such a long time to get through this. And I think it's because the subject matter was just so heavy. I mean, not only because of the, you know, struggles with this character struggling with her identity and with being queer, but also because there's a lot of talk in this book about, you know, the HIV and the AIDS crisis that was happening in like the 80s and the way that queer people were being blamed during that time for what was going on. It was just very, very heavy and very sad, but it was a really beautiful story. I just don't think that this hit me in the ways that I was hoping it would, and I can't even really explain why, but this one ended up being around a 3-star for me. Another 3-star that I had this month is The Other Side of Now. This is another book that I read for that same video because this one also deals with an alternate reality where we're following this girl Meg, who's an actress, and she ends up needing a break from her life in LA, so she ends up taking this trip to Ireland. And in her life, her best friend Amy had died 10 years ago in a car accident. She wants to go to Ireland because her best friend Amy had always wanted to go to Ireland with her. And then our main character discovers that when she lands in Ireland, it's almost like she landed in an alternate reality where her best friend Amy is still alive. And there was so much that I loved about this book. Like, I feel like the characters in this book were so well done. They were so fleshed out. Like, even the side characters, I really loved all of the characters in this book. I also love the way that this book explores friendships, you know, especially between women, and how friendships can be just as valuable in your life as relationships. I just think I ended up giving this one 3 stars because I think I expected a little bit more from this. I think I expected to feel a little bit more touched or to have something like unexpected happen in the plot. I feel like this book was very straightforward and kind of predictable, but I did love the writing in this one so much, and I can see a lot of people really loving this one. Another 3-star from that same video was The Memory Collectors, and this one deals with memories and it also deals with time travel. This one is a sci-fi book that I've been hearing some really good things about, so I was very excited to get my hands on this. And basically we're following these 4 strangers who are time traveling. It's kind of cool because in this world you can't really control like where you time travel back to, but it's really interesting because we follow from the perspective of these 4 different strangers and they all happen to be connected in like a really interesting way. And to be honest, this book kind of reads more like a mystery thriller as opposed to a sci-fi. Like, there's definitely some sci-fi elements, but like the main focus of the story really feels like this mystery of like what happened between these people and what's going on. I really had a great time with this and it was feeling like a 4-star for most of the book up until the ending. I just thought the ending was very unsatisfying for me, and I also, oh my god, I couldn't stand this one guy, Andy. One of the perspectives of the guys that we're following in this book, he drove me absolutely nuts. I mean, if you want to hear me rant about that, then I will have the vlog link down below where I read this one because I talked about that quite a bit. Another 3-star that I had was The Dead Husband Cookbook, which this one is a bummer too because I was really feeling like this one could be a 4-star or even a 5-star when I started reading it, because I love the premise of this book. I love that we're following this woman who gets hired to work as like an editor, like a ghostwriter for this other woman who is very successful and very well known for her cookbooks. But the thing about this woman is that her husband actually committed suicide back in the 90s, and there was a lot of speculation that she was the one who killed her husband. And so there's always all these jokes about like, oh, she has bits of her husband in her meatballs, and like jokes about cannibalism and stuff. I think with me, my expectations going into this one were a little bit like wrong because I thought this was going to be a horror book. I don't know, the cover just really screams horror to me, and this one ended up being a lot more of like a very slow burn mystery thriller. And so I do feel like the marketing on this one is a little bit confusing and like not entirely accurate. I also think pitching this book as like a cannibalism type of book is also really not the vibe of this at all. And so I think I just went in with some like false expectations for what this was going to be. But I also think, oh my gosh, like this book ended up getting so repetitive in the second half, and it's just so long. Like I think the audiobook was like 13 hours long, and I was like, there's no reason for the story to be that long. So it ended up only being around 3 stars for me, but I do really like this author's writing, and I definitely want to try out more books from this author in the future. Also ended up reading The Divine Farce, which I gave 3.5 stars. This is like one of the shortest books I think that I've read all year because it's only like 70 pages long, and I was able to read this one on my Kindle. This one was so incredibly strange. Oh my god, I only read this book because of the Reddit horror video that I did. I had never heard of anybody talk about this book before reading it for that video. And this was one of the weirdest horror little novellas that I've ever read in my life. I mean, I don't even know genre-wise like what this would be considered because it's definitely horror, but it also leans more into like the psychologically scary things. I've never felt so claustrophobic in my life while reading a book because the main story in this book is that you're following these people who wake up in this little cement block, and there's 3 of them and they're naked and they're all just like pressed up against each other. And then the only source of food that they have is this like pear juice that's like dribbling against the wall, and they just have to like against the wall. And then if they have to like shit or like pee, they just do that standing there next to each other because they don't have any space to squat down. And that's essentially what the book is about. Like, I can't tell you anything more without jumping into spoilers, but this was insane. And it really just gave me like the ickiest feeling. Like the way it was describing the bodies, it's not even necessarily like body horror, but just the way that it would describe the human bodies. It was just a lot for me. So this ended up being 3.5 stars. It's a very, very memorable read, that's for sure. I also ended up giving 3.5 stars to Well Actually. And this is one that, oh my god, I was loving this book so much in the first half of this. And I really thought that this one was gonna be a new favorite too, but then the second half just ended up disappointing me a little bit. And I think the main reason why I can't rate this book any higher is because this girl was driving me crazy, dude. interviewed. So what I liked about this story is that we're following this character Eva, and she has this very popular kind of like radio show podcasty thing where like she invites B-list celebrities on and they do interviews where like they eat hot dogs together and they talk about their career. And then she ends up posting this TikTok that goes viral where she's like shading this guy who's her ex, who is also on social media, and she's basically saying that like he doesn't even know what he's doing in bed and like he's a fucking loser. And then that TikTok goes super viral, and so of course on the show they're like, hey, we have to have him on, and he wants to come onto the show to like, you know, redeem himself and like take her on some dates. And I loved this guy Riley. Like he was such a fun character and like so sweet and like so endearing. But then Eva, on the other hand, like she just drove me nuts some of the times because she would overreact in a way that was like very nasty sometimes. I don't know, I just didn't really love her as a character. But otherwise, this was a really cute time, and I'm really glad that I read it because it was one of those romances where it just had me like smiling almost the entire time I was reading it. Like it was really cute. And then another 3-star that I had this month is It's Not Summer Without You by Jenny Han, but I figured I would just take the time to talk about all 3 of these books at the same time because I actually ended up giving The Summer I Turned Pretty 4 stars. I mean, looking back on these vlogs, it's probably closer to like a 3.5 for this one, but this is the first book in the series, and then It's Not Summer Without You is the second book in the series, which I gave around 3 stars, and then We'll Always Have Summer is the final 3rd book in the series, and this is one that I ended up giving 4 stars. Like this was my biggest win of the whole series. I actually really liked this 3rd one a lot, and it was really fun to be able to read these books like before the end of summer. You know, as I mentioned, I did an entire reading vlog deep diving into these 3 books, so if you want to hear all of my thoughts about these 3 books, I will have it linked down below. The beginning of that vlog is spoiler free, by the way, like for the books and for the TV shows, but then at the end of that vlog I do jump into spoilers for each one of the books and each one of the seasons of the show and kind of talk about what's different from the books versus the show. But overall, I had a really fun time reading this series, and I'm surprised that for a young adult contemporary romance kind of story, I was really invested. And if you know nothing about these books, we follow this young teenage girl named Belly, which is a nickname for Isabel, and she kind of gets involved in this love triangle with these 2 brothers that she's known for like her entire life, and it's very fun and juicy and stupid, and I had a great time. All right, jumping into my highest rated books that I had this month. I'm so happy about this. Like I had so many 4 and 5-star books this month. I can't believe it. So one of the books that I ended up giving 4 stars was We Met Like This by Casey West. And this one is a romance book that's publishing in September, so it's going to be coming out very soon. This is one that I was so excited about because I really enjoy Casey West's young adult romance books, and I was always so excited and hoping that she would write an adult romance book eventually, and she finally did. And I'm so happy to let you know that this one ended up being a really great time. We follow this woman named Margot who works in the book publishing world, but it's actually really cool because she lives in Los Angeles, and so you kind of get to see like the West Coast side of book publishing, which I really liked about this. And Margot really desperately wants to have a meet cute with somebody, but it's funny because she keeps meeting this guy Oliver on the dating apps, and they've known each other for about 3 years now, and it seems like they have a lot of chemistry that they keep wanting to deny. And this book was just so cute. Like I thought they had such cute chemistry. It reminded me a lot of Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. I also kind of love that in this book it felt like it was as much about her job and like her career and like working in publishing as it was about her romance with this guy. And I actually really liked that balance a lot because I love reading about jobs like this in the book publishing world. It's just so fun. So I really had a good time with this one, and I would highly recommend checking it out when it publishes in September. Also ended up giving 4 stars to The Dream Hotel, and this is a book that really surprised me and really took me off guard. All I knew about this book going into it was that it takes place in a near future where even our dreams are under surveillance by the government. But I was not expecting this book to be so like heavy-handed and just so hard-hitting, because in this story we're following this woman who right at the start of this book she gets arrested because she has this dream where she's like killing her husband, or like they think because of her dreams that she's planning to kill her husband just because she's dreaming things about him. And so they literally take her to this facility, lock her up, and she's basically in this like prison-like place. There is so much incredible relevant social commentary in this book that it was almost like tough to read because of that. And it's really crazy how a lot of these like sci-fi, almost like dystopian feeling books are becoming closer and closer to our own reality. It's like, it's terrifying. I think this book would have been 5 stars for me if I had cared just a little bit more about the characters. Like I feel like this book was written in a way where it felt very like clinical. It almost felt like it was written like a classic, if that makes any sense, where like I never really felt like I got attached to the characters, but like God, the story, the plot, the writing, like all of that was so good. It was so thought-provoking, and I just really loved the concepts in this book. Like it's definitely one that I'm going to be thinking about for a really long time. Okay, and then jumping into some of the thriller other books that I gave 4 stars this month. One of those is Don't Open Your Eyes by Liv Constantine. This one really surprised me because I have not given Liv Constantine the highest ratings in the past. Like, I don't think I've ever given this author anything more than 3 stars. And so I was really not expecting to like this one as much as I did. This story is about a woman named Annabelle, and she keeps having these dreams where she's like seeing things that haven't happened yet. And so it's almost like she's able to like see things in her dreams that are going to be happening in the future, and she starts to see things about her own daughter and her husband where they might be in danger. And so she's trying to like warn them, trying to protect them. And in this story, we get multiple points of view, but we're mainly following from this perspective of this woman, Annabelle. And then we also do get her daughter Scarlett's perspective. And Scarlett's point of view is like really stressful because she's like this young teenage girl who's like talking to this guy online that she also believes is like a young teenage boy, even though it's very obvious that something more sinister might be happening there. And I ended up giving this one 4 stars because this was such a fun thriller, like definitely the kind of thriller that you want to finish all within one afternoon. It's very easy to read, very short chapters, very fast paced. I think the only reason why I didn't end up giving this one 5 stars is because I really wish the dreams aspect of this story ended up playing a bigger part in the ending. I feel like that whole storyline just kind of like fizzles out into nothing. And even though this book did have some shocking, you know, moments and like twists at the end that I didn't see coming, I just wish the dreams thing went in a different direction. Like, I think that could have been really cool, and it might have made this book 5 stars. Another 4-star thriller that I had this month is Too Old for This by Samantha Downing. This is another one that I was so surprised by because Samantha Downing, at least some of her most recent releases, have really not been working for me. And this one is especially fun because we're following this woman named Lottie Jones, who is a retired serial killer. She's like in her 70s. And then one day there's this woman named Plum who shows up on her doorstep, and she's like, hey, I'm gonna make a docu-series about you and about how you were wrongfully accused of all of these crimes in the 80s. And then Lottie is like, oh shit, like what the fuck? Like, who are you? She's like worried that she's gonna have to come out of retirement and start killing again. And this story was just so fun to read. I absolutely loved being in the head of this character, Lottie. She was freaking hilarious. She definitely reminded me a lot of some of my other favorite like serial killer characters like Dexter or like Joe Goldberg. But it was so refreshing to read from the point of view of an elderly woman who is a serial killer. I think it's really funny in this book because there will be a lot of times where like she'll comment about how like people just underestimate her, you know, because since she's an elderly woman, they don't think that she's capable of doing certain things. And she really like uses that to her advantage in a way that's really fun. I think the only reason why I didn't give this one a higher rating is that there weren't any like huge shocking reveals for me at the end of this book. Like, I thought everything was kind of predictable and a little bit what I expected. It's not exactly the kind of book that has a lot of twists because you're not like trying to figure out who did it because you're reading about who did it. And it's more about the thrill of like, is she gonna get caught? You know, like that's more what you're reading it for. But I still do wish that this book had a more like shocking ending, and I feel like it could have been 5 stars for me, but I had such a fun time with this book. And then another 4-star thriller that I had this month was The Ghost Writer by Julie Clark. And I'm so excited and so relieved, you know, because this was my book troop book club pick for the month of August. And I ended up really enjoying this one a lot, actually, like way more than I thought that I would. And this one ended up being so interesting because we're following this woman named Olivia who is a ghostwriter, and she gets hired for this job by her father. And her father is this man named Vincent Taylor, who he's like a really well-known horror author, but like in the 1970s, he got accused of like murdering both of his siblings. And after 50 years of silence, he's ready to like tell the truth about what really happened to his siblings. I don't know what it was about this book. I just had a lot of fun while I was reading this. I just really liked the dynamic between the siblings in this, you know, between Vincent and his siblings, Danny and Poppy. I also really loved that this book would go back and forth between perspectives, because most of this story you are reading from Olivia's perspective, who's like the daughter, but then you also do get these flashback chapters that are told from Vincent's point of view when he was a kid. You also do get to read a lot of like different diary entries and like things like that. So I loved the altering perspectives in this. And I will admit that this book does feel like a bit of a slow burn at times, or at least like it took me hours to read like 200 pages of this book when normally I'd be able to like finish an entire book in like 4 hours. And there was a twist at the end that I was so shocked by. Like, I think I was distracted by everything else that was going on that I didn't even consider that. So yeah, I will have the live show linked down below if you missed it, because this was our book club discussion for August and we recently just had the live show, so I'll have that linked. But I'm so glad to finally enjoy another book troop pick. Like, that feels really good for me. All right, and then jumping into my top 3 favorite books that I had this month. One of those is Party of Liars, which, what do you know, it's another thriller, and this one one was probably like the biggest surprise out of everything that I read this month, because I absolutely hate this cover. Like, I was so ready to like give this book a try and unhaul it because like I think this cover is so lame. It just doesn't feel like it matches the tone of this book at all. And like, I just discovered, by the way, look at the UK cover, or like the British version of the cover. Dude, that is stunning. Like, why couldn't we get a cover that looks anything like that? So because I love this book so much, like I'm actually debating like just unhauling this copy and getting a copy of the British version, because that version is stunning. But anyway, I loved this thriller because we're following this young girl who's having a 16th birthday party in this mansion. The young girl, Sophie, she's the one that's going to be having the 16th birthday party, and then you do follow from the perspective of her new stepmother, which is this young girl named Danny, because her dad, Ethan, just remarried recently, and he married this girl that's only like 5 years older than Sophie. So you get Danny's perspective is like one of the main ones that you're following, but then you also do get this other woman, Kim, who is the actual birth mother of Sophie, and then you do get Sophie's best friend, Michaela, and you get their nanny, who's like in her 60s. So I think you get about 4 different perspectives while you're reading this book, and I loved the switching of the point of views. I love that this is the kind of thriller that almost all takes place on like one night, and I loved the way that this book felt kind of spooky at times, because they would say that this house kind of feels haunted, or like, especially in the nanny's chapters, she would be like, this house has a bad feeling to it, like something's off. They would talk about this legend where like there was this woman that they referred to as the mother who like lost her baby in that house, and now everybody thinks that they're seeing this woman in white at night. Oh my god, like the vibes were just immaculate. I really think though that this is the type of thriller that is like so messy and so toxic, and like almost none of these characters are likable. But when I tell you I could not pull my eyes away from the page, and I had to finish this entire book in one afternoon. I did not even have the audiobook, okay? Like, I was doing this whole thing with my eyeballs, and I had to finish it within a few hours because I was so invested. I really do think that if you liked the book The Hunting Wives, I feel like this would be right up your alley. It reminded me a lot of that one. All right, and then one of the only 5-star books that I had this month was The Merge, and this one is a sci-fi book that's going to be coming out in November. I actually read an arc of this book on my Kindle. My god, this book was so fascinating. Like, I can't not give this book 5 stars. I did end up reading this book for that reading vlog that I just posted. That was like the memories, dreams kind of reading vlog. So I'll have that vlog linked down below if you want to hear me like rave about this book for such a long time. But in this story, it's so fascinating because we're following these characters who are living in this world where the climate crisis has gotten so bad that like things have really changed in the world, and they start coming out with this new technology called the Merge, where basically 2 minds can merge into one body. And they're now starting to do these like clinical trials on patients with Alzheimer's. And so we're following this main protagonist named Amelia, who's only like 23 years old, and she's gonna be merging with her mom, who has Alzheimer's, who's in her 60s. And she's gonna merge with her in an attempt to try and save her and like stop the Alzheimer's from happening and like taking over her mind. Dude, this book was crazy, so fascinating. I think this subject matter, like reading about any characters that have, you know, like dementia or Alzheimer's, is something that like really hits me close to home. Like, it really affects me personally and makes me emotional. Every single thing about this book is so thought-provoking. I love the way that it talks about how like this idea of the merge like impacts their society, how it impacts people in different class levels. And of course, you know, it's the kind of thing that only benefits the rich and it makes life harder for the poor. God, I love this so much. It was so fascinating too because you're following from the perspective of both the mother and the daughter in this book. And god, reading from the mom's perspective at times is just heartbreaking. Like, it was so hard to do, but I loved this. Even though the ending of this book is an ending that like even now to this day I'm still not sure how I feel about the ending of this book, but regardless of that, it's still a 5-star because of how much I can't stop thinking about this book. I've been talking about this book to anybody who will let me just like talk their ear off about it, you know? All right, and then my favorite book that I read this month has got to be A Short Stay in Hell, which I also gave this 5 stars, and I think it's like one of my top favorite books of this year. This one is a horror novella book that I only read for that horror Reddit video, and I had not really heard about this book otherwise, and I'm so glad that I read this because it was so weird and I literally just can't stop thinking about this book. I don't know if a horror novella is like the right thing to call this book because it feels like so much more than that. I mean, on the back it talks about how this one is considered more like existential horror, and it says that this is a perfect blend of science fiction, theology, and horror, which I would agree with. I mean, basically we're following this main character man who gets dropped into hell after he dies, but this is not the kind of hell that you might imagine. Our character wakes up in this hell where he's in this like vast library where like it just goes on and on and on forever, and any book that could exist or has ever existed could be in this library. This book was just so disorienting to read and really makes you think about like how small you are and like how short our lives are. I don't know, it was one of the strangest reading experiences I've ever had. It kind of reminds me of like House of Leaves, just in the way that like I felt so disoriented while I was reading the book, and I feel like that's the intention. And like the ending of this book was just so bleak and like, damn, gave me the full range of emotions to be reading this book. I've been thinking about this one nonstop. Like, it was just so thought-provoking. Like, who thinks like this? And I think the best part is that this book is only 102 pages and I flew through this in one sitting. Like, I think that's so impressive when an author is able to make me feel so much in such little time. So yeah, wow, A Short Stay in Hell was incredible and I highly recommend reading this one. All right, those are all of the books that I read in the month of August. August has been such an amazing reading month. I mean, I know I had a lot of DNFs, but I honestly think that that's for the best because then my reading month ended up going so much better than I think it would have otherwise. I'm also loving the fact that I seem to be falling back in love with thrillers. Like, I'm hoping that we can keep this trend going for the rest of the year because it feels so good to read thrillers that I'm actually really loving again. It's been a while, you know? Anyway, you'll have to let me know how many books did you read in the month of August? What was the best book that you read in the month of August? And if you've read any of these books that I've read, of course, please let me know your thoughts on them. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye.